Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got some early Week 15 waiver wire targets here with 10 potential names that could be contributors to our teams down the stretch with what is most likely week number 1 of the fantasy football playoffs. This past week, week 14, we still have Monday Night Football to go, but this was a big one. So let me know down in the comment section below if you were able to pick up that crucial week 14 W. I'll have a comment down in the comment section below that'll have, it'll say like this comment if you picked up the win. So we'll see how many of you all ended up going out there and racking up some key wins in those week 14 contests. But here we go, taking an early look at week 15. Those of you who are new around here to the channel, I did not just get glasses. For those of you that are noticing that now, for the better part of a month, these bad boys have been missing and my eyes have been dying as of late from my studio light, but these help tone that down a little bit. So we're back with the glasses. The new look SFS, which is really the old look SFS, is back, and we're ready to go here for the fantasy football playoffs. So not wasting any time, hit the intro. Let's get into our top 10 must-add players for this week. All right, here we go. I'm pumped for this upcoming week's games. We had some awesome performances in week 14, in particular the later afternoon window where we had the 2 walk-off touchdowns from the Buccaneers. It was a crazy game. The Bills battled and rallied all the way back, ended up taking that one in OT, and then my boy Brandon Ayuk at the last second gets in the end zone for the 49ers and knocks off the Cincinnati Bengals in OT. So a couple of entertaining games there. Here we go. Our first must-add player is Rashaad Penny, owned in just about 5.7% of leagues. So he is widely available for those of you out there looking to add a running back who could potentially play a role for your team down the stretch here. He was named the NFL Red Zone Visa MVP of the week. So quite the accomplishment there for Rashaad Penny, all jokes aside. So 16 rushing attempts, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had multiple very impressive runs where he was able to break into the second and even third levels of the defense and take the rock for a steady and healthy amount of yardage. This is a talented player, and Rashaad Penny's biggest issue, he has very much so been a bust since he was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, is he just cannot stay healthy. It's one thing after another. It's a train wreck of spiraling injury events that keeps him widely unavailable and off the field, and that's been the story to his career for this point in time. And while Penny right now is sitting inside of what is, for the better part of this entire season without Chris Carson, a workhorse, excuse me, not a workhorse, far from that. It is a running back committee style offense of running back deployment. Penny was the clear-cut most involved player on the field. His 16 rushing attempts significantly outmarked any other player in the backfield. The next closest running back in the Seattle offense was Alex Collins with 7 for 16 yards. So not in anything close in terms of the overall output for the other running backs in this offense. Rashaad Penny, again, he's a capable player. He's a capable pass catcher. He's nothing spectacular. He's not going to come out here and dominate your fantasy leagues down the stretch of the season. But I believe he has a serviceable enough skill set if he's healthy and if he can manage to be durable enough in these coming games here, that this is my priority add for the week. If this continues to be the trend where he is significantly out-touching the other running backs in the Seahawks offense, this could be big news for a lot of lineups out there. Foreman, let's not forget about him. He is much less available. He's owned in about 56% of leagues, but his 15 touches for 62 yards and a touchdown were also a notch higher and by a significant marker than any other Tennessee Titans running back. Jeremy McNichols had 8 attempts and Hilliard had 6. So you're talking about Foreman having more total touches than those 2 next players had combined. I know last week there was some conversation and some questions in the comment section below as to which Tennessee running back is the most valuable add. I suggested that was Foreman. That proved true and to be the case here, as again, his 15 out-touched those other 2 players combined. This isn't something that's going to give you excellent upside, but what you're getting here is a Tennessee offense that has a need to run the football, and they give steady amounts of volume and work to the lead back, which for the time being is Foreman, who actually wears number 7 right now, not number 45. So we'll have to search around and fish for a new picture for him. Rashod Bateman, now a wide receiver target to talk about today. This is such a talented player. We've talked Rashaad Bateman in different spurts throughout this season, but this game was such an impressive performance. Lamar Jackson sprains his ankle, exits this contest, and then Huntley comes in, and Rashaad Bateman has arguably his most impressive game of this season. He's owned in less than 25% of leagues, so 3/4 of fantasy rosters out there have the opportunity to go out and acquire Rashaad Bateman. This is a week when a lot of teams actually dropped him after multiple underwhelming performances, but he comes right back, has a strong game, and shows us why he's worthy of a roster spot here, catching 7 of 8 targets for over 100 yards, hit 103 total, and 13.5 fantasy points. His skill set is so complete for a player of this youth in the NFL, this young of an age. His route running, his poise, his awareness, his body positioning in contested catch scenarios. He had a couple really, really impressive plays here. And as he continues to grow and develop as a player, I can't wait for the upside he has. I can't wait to see what he's able to take his game to and the extent of greatness that he could potentially achieve here. This offense isn't exactly always the best setup to have situations that breed success at the wide receiver position. But this year in particular, for the better part of the first half of the season, we saw Hollywood Brown have a very, very productive fantasy year. He's cooled off as of late, but there is a lot of opportunity as, again, Rashaad Bateman continues to develop as a player to be a key contributor. I think that he has an opportunity in 1 and 2 flex leagues to be a contributor for various lineups. He certainly doesn't have the most established floor at this point in time, but the ceiling value because of that talent is something very much at play. KJ Osborn, another intriguing wide receiver add this week. He was very, very streaky in the Thursday night game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He made a huge catch over the top of the defense for a touchdown. Outside of that, he only caught 33% of his targets, 3 of 9 to be exact. He's an impressive player. He can do a few different things. He is traditionally the slot player for this Vikings offense, but his role has been expanded and increased due to the injury to Adam Thielen with a sprained ankle. So we don't exactly know how much longer Thielen will be out. He could potentially, of course, return this week. We'll see if that's the case or not as we learn more information throughout this week here. But again, KJ Osborn went out there, got the job done. 83 yards and a receiving touchdown for Osborn in Thielen's absence. So it was an easy matchup. It was a favorable situation for him to go out there and produce. But Kirk Cousins has shown us throughout various spurts this year, KJ Osborn has his trust, and in times of need, he will go to him with the football in big spots. Russell Gage, another option here. He's owned in just under 50% of leagues. Only 4 grabs for 64 yards, nothing phenomenal. 6 targets on the day for Russell Gage against the Carolina Panthers. However, this is the current number 1 wide receiver in an NFL offense. That has value within itself because he's most likely going to see almost every week the highest amount of target volume at the wide receiver position for this, again, Falcons offense. So you're not going to get yourself an overly elite ceiling out of Russell Gage down the stretch of the season, but what you can get in particular in our PPR leagues is a semi-dependable floor, someone who can go out there and just be kind of a steady Eddie as long as Calvin Ridley is out of the lineup for this team. Gage is a quality enough NFL player to the point that he can separate from NFL defensive backs, get open, make plays here and there, and again, not the biggest ceiling in the world, but someone who can be trusted as a flex level option in our lineups. Mike Davis, another Atlanta Falcon here. Davis is not superly, or I should say, he isn't very abundantly available for a lot of fantasy owners out there, but he's right around that 50% ownership marker as well. In back-to-back games, he's had respectable lineup level production to the point where if you absolutely had to start him, there would be some opportunity for your teams to have quality and, again, lineup-worthy numbers from him. Back-to-back 10.5-point games and half PPR scoring. Now, clearly, this is Cordero Patterson's backfield. Clearly, he's the number 1 option, the more explosive player, and the guy you want on your fantasy team. But with the current climate of the fantasy running back position, the scarcity that we have with that group of players, the lack of availability, the injuries that have been racking up here, Mike Davis is someone that you could have as a really RB3 level producer, but in desperate times, and if you are really, really desperate, you could potentially deploy him as an RB2. That is something I would never, ever, ever want to have be the case for my lineup. However, this is a player who has shown us more in the last 2 weeks, I think, in the plays that he's made than I've seen throughout the vast majority of this season. And we've seen him have serviceable level numbers with Carolina back in 2020. So Mike Davis, a lower level ad, someone you are hoping you never have to start. However, you never know with fantasy football. You might just be in need of a running back, and chances are you probably could use some more depth. Mike Davis could be an ad for that matter. Same deal with Rex Burkhead here. We had David Johnson dealing with COVID this week, so Rex Burkhead handled the large majority of the touches, 15 touches, 66 yards, no touchdowns, and this is a very low level of output offense. They struggled to really get things going in the second half against Seattle, which is a defense that you should be exploiting. So you're looking at a super, super low ceiling. To be honest, the floor in this situation is quite poor as well. However, this is the starting running back, and I put that in quotations because this is, again, another one of those committee-style offenses that you're at least getting the lead back in a committee, or the lead back as of late, because they have been shifting things up. We've seen Royce Freeman get involved. Philip Lindsay once upon a time was involved in this offense before he was then let go and released from the team. This Texans team is a mess. It's not a good organization, a good offense. However, Davis Mills actually was fairly impressive, had, I believe, one of the league-high passing yardage totals from Week 14's game. So something to watch here, but I'm not going to be overly high on Rex Burkhead. I think that would be foolish to do for a Texans running back during this NFL season. Rex Burkhead, though, again, could be a serviceable depth play for teams as we move down the stretch of the year. Justin Jackson, this is a lot more of an interesting name to me, maybe something to watch a little bit closer and have higher up on your priorities list, especially if you are an Austin Eckler owner. If you did not watch the games, Austin Eckler had an ankle injury, and he was not able to put very much pressure on that ankle after sustaining the injury. He went over to the cart, got that thing absolutely loaded up with sports tape, and if you watch the game, it was actually quite funny. They used an entire roll of athletic tape to wrap up his ankle just to not see him again in that contest. So the Chargers, to be fair, were controlling that game. They were up by multiple scores. They had no reason to send their star player out there and potentially risk him having or sustaining an injury down the stretch of that contest. However, if he were to miss time, you've got yourself a situation between Justin Jackson and Joshua Kelly. I expect that there would not be one true workhorse running back. It would be more so a 1-2 punch. However, for the sake of today's episode, we'll put Justin Jackson up on the screen. These are the two backs to keep your eye on in terms of players that could be used in relief of Austin Eckler if that was a situation we were dealing with. And Austin Eckler is one of the best running backs in fantasy football, so that would open up a huge void of potential production opportunity for these players to capitalize on. So keep an eye on that Austin Eckler situation, especially if you are an owner here, because down the stretch of the season, you need available running backs who have consistent ability to produce numbers. That is something that comes few and far between. Teams that win fantasy leagues down the stretch make crucial waiver wire adds to players who are fulfilling and relieving other players who have been injured. It's the timeless thing that happens year over year. We get down the stretch of the season, players wear down, teams are without crucial lineup pieces, and if you can just get to the waiver wire, make the right pickups, you could be setting up yourself with an opportunity to have a league-winning piece off the waiver wire that came out of left field and nobody expected. So you look back even just a few seasons back, there was a couple names last year, but specifically the one that stands out to me as an extreme case because I won a handful of leagues adding one piece just a few seasons back in 2018 was C.J. Anderson for the LA Rams. And that was the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl. About an hour, I want to say, before the game, Todd Gurley was ruled out with that age-old, the classic knee arthritis injury, and that was in the early stages when we were just learning about that issue. I went out and snatched up C.J. Anderson in all of my leagues, put him in the starting lineup, and he goes nuts, scores multiple touchdowns, has all these yards, and all of a sudden I have this difference maker that just came out of nowhere. So listening and tuning into the injury radar for fantasy is going to be a huge difference maker. I cannot stress that enough. For the back end last quarter of this season, a lot of key difference makers are going to be out there, so keep your ear close to the ground for that news. Craig Reynolds, this one was a fun story. It was a feel-good game, something interesting to watch here. I don't think much is going to materialize out of this situation, but he was the most productive running back for the Lions this week. Now, let's put some context in here. Why was that the case in Week 14? Well, first of all, DeAndre Swift, bad news. He is a candidate. They are considering sending him to the injured reserve, which would effectively and most likely end his season. And Jamal Williams, the number 2 running back for this offense, was also dealing with being on the COVID reserve list. So next man up mentality. This is exactly what I was just talking about here. Craig Reynolds, the game or the day or two before the game, if you just did your research here and checked out who the next men up were on the Detroit Lions backfield, you could have an opportunity that Craig Reynolds was a contributor and maybe a flex spot for you this week. And he was ultimately able to go out there, have a decent showing. He had some blunder-like plays that were not very impressive, but he also did some very nice things as well. He's a serviceable piece, and again, the reason I don't expect this to be a long-term play here is because I expect Jamal Williams to be back sooner rather than later. However, Craig Reynolds could find himself as a player that is the number 2, and you just want to keep him stashed on your roster if Swift is shut down for the rest of the season or something else were to play out here. So Craig Reynolds, at least have that name in the back of your mind. Maybe not someone who I would go out and add over the other names on this list, but again, something to consider. Amon Ra St. Brown here, another Detroit Lion. I should probably change his picture and get something more updated for him, especially after he has been making some splash plays as of late. He, of course, caught the game-winning touchdown reception for the Lions' lone win this year against the Minnesota Vikings. So again, I should get him an in-game shot picture for the screen art for you all. But Amon Ra St. Brown looks like he could be stepping forward and emerging as one of the top options in the passing game for this Detroit Lions offense. Khalif Raymond has also been a really nice gadget piece for them that they put in motion, use his speed to their advantage, and get him out in space scoring some points. But St. Brown, 8 grabs, 73 yards. Again, having that game-winning touchdown in Week 13. He's made some nice plays, and I liked him as a 4th-round pick out of USC this year. I think he does a lot of things really well and could potentially develop into a quality player and quality piece for this Detroit offense. Time will tell, but if you're looking for a bench wide receiver stash, he's one of these late blossoming wide receivers down the stretch of the year that could be, again, a nice difference maker and in some nice matchups down the stretch, someone that can give us some quality numbers. So Amon Ra, another name to look at. And then finally, Josh Palmer, and I put him last on the list. This is technically the 11th name in today's video, which we only prefaced there was 10 in the title of this episode. However, Josh Palmer is another player, another rookie out of Tennessee that I really like. His skill set is very impressive to me. He runs really great routes. He's great at the catch point. Winning contested passes is also something he does very well. He's at best the number 3 wide receiver in this offense, maybe even the number 4 if you consider Jalen Guyton to be the number 3 guy behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But with Keenan Allen out due to COVID, Josh Palmer stepped up to the plate, scored a touchdown, and ran a decent amount of routes, had a solid amount of targets come his way, and produced with the opportunities he was given. So you're looking at a player, again, most likely not someone who's going to get the opportunity to start or produce in matchups where you have the rest of this wide receiver core healthy. But I think he's more of a dependable lineup play in situations when that's not the case, because he isn't dependent solely on running deep routes and scoring deep touchdown passes down the field, which Guyton was able to do against the Giants this week, but that's not overly the most consistent and reliable thing to bet on a week-to-week basis with your lineup. So Josh Palmer is certainly only an option for the deepest of deep leagues, 14-plus man leagues, but he is an option. So that's something I wanted to toss out there. And honestly, I just wanted to talk about the guy because I really like who he is as a talent, as a playmaker, and potentially someone we could see down the road here. So maybe in a year, if you're watching this video for some odd reason, I'm not sure why you'd be watching a Week 14 episode a Week 15 fantasy episode after this week has passed by and is now history, but you heard it here first. Josh Palmer, he's a playmaker, he's a quality player, and someone to keep your eye on if you're in a dynasty league, especially if you're in a dynasty league, for the long-term picture here. Alrighty, those are my 10, but really 11 must-add players for Week 15 action. If other names pop up throughout the week after Monday Night Football perhaps, or we learn something new about an injury after the game slates have been complete, I will put those either down in a pinned comment in the comment section, or I'll send out a push to the SFS community Discord. That, of course, is a free server to join, and the link to that can be found in the description of today's episode, so go check that out and join that community Discord out. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Click that subscribe button, turn the bell on if you're new around here. We post fantasy episodes every day throughout the week for the entirety of the NFL season. So be sure to check that stuff out. Don't miss another episode this week, and I'll see you guys there. Peace out.